Would you be willing to discuss the most you ever made for a brand deal?
Sure.
What is it?
Oh, like you're gonna just ask me?
Yeah, I would know. I'm sure everybody would love to know. I mean, fascinating.
It does feel
I'll tell you. I'll give numbers. I don't like to. I don't like to because
but people have no idea.
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
And if we can bust this nut open, rather.
I'm literally trying to.
Can you stricken the nut?
I can struck in the nut. Let's struck.
That doesn't make
nut.
any sense, does it?
But I don't think people understand. Let me put it this way. Let me give a little preface to this conversation. And you don't have to share anything you're not comfortable with.
Okay, go.
I know you're a guy that works with a lot of brands, and
I do.
I think you probably got some big paychecks in your day. Yeah.
I have no complaints.
Yeah. But I'll put it this way.
Go.
When I was first starting out my YouTube career, I befriended a big creator. And at the time, I was probably making $2,000 or $3,000 a month from ad revenue. And I thought, that's pretty sick, you know? And he told me, I go, how much do you make for one of those ads? Because I never worked with the brand. In fact, we didn't go on to work with brands for a long time. But he goes, I make $30,000 for one brand deal. And I was like, what? I'm like, dude, that's how much I make in a year. And that completely blew my mind. I don't think people understand necessarily how much money people make. And that as someone who had even been doing YouTube for a year or two, I was like, 30,000, dude, that's insane. Now I know you're not impressed by that number, are you?
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
$30,000
is an ungodly amount of money, but it goes much higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes much higher. And I think before we start talking numbers, to put a little context to it, to like, what is the ROI? What's the return on an investment like that? How does that make sense? Why would a company write a check for $30,000 to a YouTuber?
If you're getting millions of views, I mean, it speaks for itself.
Sure, but I think I look at my wife, Candace, and I look at what her ad spending is, which, she's a tiny startup, Billy. They're bootstrapping. They don't do a lot in revenue. But the amount of money that she spends on Instagram, on Facebook, and then just on online ads. And then there's a very literal quantification of her return on that investment. For every $100 you make, you'll make this much back. And then when you start to apply those same sort of metrics to a well-executed brand deal, which are the only kinds that I try to do. I try to do it well, so it's really good for the brand that I'm working with, and it's good for me. You start to see that makes a lot of sense. When you understand that, Coca-Cola spends hundreds of thousands of dollars for a 30-second commercial that plays during a basketball game that literally nobody watches the commercial because they fast forward. You go take a leak, you talk to your friends, you have a fucking cell phone in your hand like I do, and when a commercial comes on, you are not paying attention to that Arby's commercial. They're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for those 30 seconds. What's their return on that? And then you start to compare that to having Ethan and Hila talk about that same product for 90 seconds, personally endorse it and why they endorse it.
Connect with their audience in an entertaining way that they're actually engaged and they're listening.
I'm not going to talk numbers because I'm working with them right now, but
Coca-Cola?
No, NordVPN is a company that I work with, and Nord's worked with a bunch of creators and stuff.
I think we work with them.
They're wonderful, but
ExpressVPN.
You work with
Sorry, we're going to have to blur that.
Whatever, without naming names, any VPN company, a VPN is a really difficult thing to communicate. Either you know how it works or you don't, and if you don't, it's a lot to explain. And on top of that, can you advertise something like that online? It just looks it looks strange. You don't understand what it is. So what's a way to communicate the complexity of that product and then explain its value and then hopefully have customers go and buy that product? You can do that in a fucking TV commercial? No way. You can do that with a banner ad? Where and how are you going to do that?
Right.
So you work with a creator that company that I mentioned in particular has worked with Phil, and they've worked with a bunch of tech reviewers. And all of a sudden you have a fairly eloquent individual who knows how to communicate ideas to an audience that they understand, they speak with, they have a dialogue with. And it becomes a really fair value prospect.
So how much?
Because that individual is getting paid and that company is getting the exposure they wouldn't otherwise have access to.
Right.
How much? I'm not willing to talk about that brand. But other brands that I've worked with, it's difficult. If we're talking about a single transaction.
Biggest one ever.
I don't have that. I would say the biggest deal ever for to bring up a brand or make a dedicated video for a brand is in the six figures, hundreds of thousands of dollars. as in like more than $100,000. But I'll also say that like in my career, I've had the opportunity to do things like that a couple of times.
Right, they go that
Right.
big.
Yeah.
Like when I talk about like Samsung, like when we did that project where we turned a abandoned shopping mall into a playground for underprivileged kids. Okay, my fee on that was not huge, and I donated, I think, most of it, a significant portion of it, to the Boys and Girls Club of Milwaukee. I just didn't feel right getting paid for that. But like that cost maybe like like over $1 million
Just to produce.
Wow.
And obviously the brand's intent there was like, we want our products in front of people, and I shot the whole thing on their phone. But it was not a hard sell for any individual item. And that's why I was so willing to like attach my brand to it. I did behind the scenes videos. I did the hero video, which did like 5 or 10 million views. I did all of this stuff, and it was all about Samsung, because they were like sticking their necks out to spend over $1 million on a project that like, they're not doing print ads. They're not getting like, this isn't a Super Bowl commercial. This is literally like Casey Neistat turning a fucking shopping mall into a dangerous playground for kids.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of money thrown at something like that, even though my fee may not have been so high. So that's why I don't have like I know it's satisfying.
I
got paid $200,000 to talk about this pair of shoes. Like that sort of clean transactions never happened.
Right.
And on the ones where there's real money being pushed around, it's usually a far more complex
It's more
deal
complicated.
Like that. I know it's not a satisfying answer.
It is satisfying.
No,
I'm
yeah.
extremely satisfied.
Okay, good. I feel good about that.
Yeah.
I feel good.
I'm
about
extremely satisfied.
that. The one-off deals that are like, we'll give you 50 grand to say this,
Yes.
Yes.
typically say no to. Because then it starts to feel like your channel is like this place for transactions. Like I just had a deal, and it was very lucrative. It was 6 figures, but it was from a laptop company. And what their request was, we want you to do a product review, a video just about our laptop, and we want you to endorse it.
Oh,
And for that, we'll give you this much money. But it was like enough money to pay for my kid's fucking college.
right.
It was very hard to say no to.
Yeah.
But it did cross the line of what I felt was acceptable to share with my audience.
Right.
And that is really, really tough, because those opportunities, like,
Yeah.
We've
I don't get them every day.
Yeah.
We've had a lot. Not a lot.
Not
but
a
like,
lot,
There's
but
been
yeah.
some opportunities that it's oftentimes that like the most lucrative ones are the ones you really should say no
Shouldn't.
to.
Yeah.
For example, I don't want to
Just talking,
disparage anyone.
A
Yeah.
coffee company, a cell phone, just speak in generalities.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, don't
let's
say
say
a
let's
brand.
say a company that sells brain enhancing drugs, or not drugs, supplement, vitamins.
Okay, good.
Supplements. Yeah.
Yeah.
That I won't touch.
And I'm like, I don't believe in this product.
Right, that's where it gets hard.
I think it's stupid. And just because they're offering me like 6-figure deal, I'm gonna look like an idiot if I promote this, and I can't with a straight face. I can't.
No, I think you guys,
You
rightly
know.
so, were super critical of like that loot box scandal when that came up.
Right.
know?
It was the one,
That
oh yeah, that Rice Gum and
Rice
Jake
Gum,
Paul were
Yeah, like,
promoting.
you know, I got an offer
Yeah.
from similar products, similar companies to that. Like supplements, I get a lot of offers about. I just don't know what it is or what it means, so I have to say no
Yeah.
to it. And the flip of that is like that VPN that I was talking about. That's a product I use.
Right.
The irony of that
That's
is
the
like I
best.
prepaid 3 years in advance before I did a brand deal,
Right.
so I can't use my code to get a better deal on a product. I use it. I know that
that's
it's a
the
good
best.
product. Yeah.
When I work with companies that I actually like Ring, for example, as a sponsor, like I love Ring.
Yeah, and see,
And I pursued them. And then when you get a partner like that, it's like, I believe in it. I think it's a great product. They're super legit. Then I'm willing to.
I've gotten some cool offers and lucrative offers from car companies.
Really?
Yeah, that I can't in good conscience.
Because
say
you don't
yes.
like the car? Bro, I
That's
always
so
make fun of
funny.
Matthew McConaughey because he's in all these Lincoln commercials. And I'm like, that dude does not drive a Lincoln, bro.
If he does, he's in the right. But like,
He does.
I drive a Tesla, and I remember like a car company was producing an electric car, and I was like, "That's cool. It's not as good as my Tesla." And I really believe in my Tesla, and Tesla doesn't pay for advertising,
No,
which
they
sucks.
don't.
I talk about them all the time. here.
But
Yeah.
it's like I couldn't, in good conscience, be like, "Wow, this new electric car from this other company is amazing," because I don't believe
They
it.
really aren't. We started looking around, like, what are the other options to Tesla? And it's none.
Their lead
It's-
is unreal.
Yeah.
The cars, yeah, it's so much
But-
better. But it's good that, but anyway, that's great.
So yeah, so
Other stuff that I
there's
would
real
say
money,
no
but
to
if
is
you
like-
don't do it with a conscience, it can really be.
Well, you got
trouble.
to, because okay, even if you're looking at it purely from a I want to make as much money as possible standpoint, it's still short-sighted because ultimately it devalues your brand to kind of.
I will say, like, one of my regrets when I was vlogging is that I didn't figure out the merch thing sooner.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
I never-
Kind of came out of nowhere though.
The Paul brothers.
To be
The Paul brothers, yeah.
totally to give them the credit. I think when those two guys started selling like merch, everyone was like, "Holy crap!" Dude, I gotta-
Yeah.
And I can tell you for a fact,
Yeah.
like, those guys and a lot of the guys who push merch hard, they make considerably more revenue off of their merchandise sales than they do off their AdSense.
Of course.
And I had opportunities early on to do that. When I look back, like the loyalty my audience had for my content when I was really doing a couple million views a day, I know the amount of money that I could have made. And the reason why I didn't do it then, and I think I was wrong, by the way, is at the time it felt too predatory.
Interesting.
At the time, and I don't believe this now, at the time, it felt like to just sell stuff that people would only be buying because it was from me felt inherently dishonest. And at the time,
yeah.
where my head was like, if I'm going to do it, it has to be not so dissimilar from the way you're doing Teddy Fresh. Like, I need to start my own line. I'm not just doing merch to do merch. I'm not just making shirts to make shirts. It has to be something bigger. And that, it's that thing where it's like perfection got in the way of good enough.
Yeah.
The reality was, like, I've done some merch since then.
Merch
I've released
is
a
great.
couple.
Yeah,
Merch
but I
is
think
great.
there was a shift in attitude.
Yeah,
There was a shift in attitude.
I feel
And-
like we used to think that too, like a long time ago.
It didn't help the way that Jake and Logan did it then, which was predatory, which
It
was super
so
aggressive.
distasteful.
Yeah.
And it was like,
Everywhere.
okay, that's the culmination of everything that I don't want to be doing in the
Yeah.
merch space, so I'm not going to do it. And I think that cost me a lot of revenue. And I also think the thing that I underestimated is, like, when I was like 14 years old, the amount of length, the amount of distance, the amount of effort that I would go through just to get the right skateboard t-shirt, because I wanted to show the world that, like, I'm a super big fan of this skateboard company. Like, I do feel like I almost let my audience down. Like, I should have given them access to a $20 t-shirt
they
that
like
was
it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they get to be a part of
It's a
something.
way to-
I didn't respect that then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's something that I do regret, because it was a financial loss for me, but also, like, I think it would have been a cool way to
Just
connect
people
with my
walk.
audience.
Yeah, I mean, dude, when we do these meet and greets, people show up with like this classic merch, and it's just like, oh, that's
It's
sick.
so good.
It's really
Yeah.
funny to see like a super old shirt
Yeah.
of ours that we probably even forget that we've ever made, you know?
My merch
It's
strategy,
pretty
and
cool.
I've stopped, and I'm happy to say that I've stopped, but my merch strategy was I made a video like 8 years ago that was like, if you want free stickers, just send me a self-addressed stamped envelope and I'll fill them with stickers. And we've sent out like tens of thousands of dollars worth of stickers, which cost pennies to make. And like I had to have dedicated employees who only sent out free.
Oh my
So my
God.
merch strategy was so bad it cost me
Yeah.
Yeah.
insane amounts of money. And that was something I wish I had my shit together so I could have done that in a more effective way.
Well,
Shop CaseyNeistat.com. I think I still have some merch up there. Shop
Get out there. Quick.
CaseyNeistat.com.
Casey Neistat.
Yeah, go buy something.